Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. Today I just want to rant a little bit about some common misconceptions I see about Abyss of Legends. Just my thoughts on it after I finally explored. I wanted to put in my 2 cents. Now that said, these are just my opinions and this is just a rant, so don't take it too seriously because, I'm probably going to take it too seriously as I continue talking after this, so one of us has to take the high road here. But that said, some misconceptions I want to tackle, and the first one is you don't actually need Aegon to do a completion run. And this is coming from someone who literally waited to do Abyss of Legends until he had Aegon. So, take it with a grain of salt, but there are plenty of runs out there on multiple different paths that people have used alternative teams. No Aegon on their team, no Doom on their team, no Sim Supreme, no Torch. KT1 has a straight no horsemen, so there's no Nick Fury, there's no Torch, there's no Aegon, there's no Doom on his team, and he's done it. He's done a completion, and he actually did it cheaper than I did. So it just goes to show you how big of a difference skill is when you're running Abyss of Legends. Like, skill is by far the biggest factor, and then roster is the second most contributing factor, and then finally unit man. Now, the reason I say that is because I know a lot of people really, they think, oh, I'm not even going to look at Abyss of Legends until I have Aegon. And I just think that's like not a good thought process to go in. Yes, for an exploration, I really encourage you to just wait for Aegon. It's like Labyrinth of Legends, because paths 2 through 4 don't offer anything for you without, actually going for the full exploration, that I don't see a reason to really push Abyss unless you have an optimal team as far as exploration goes. But because the completion run nets you a full tier 5 class catalyst, I really want to encourage a lot of people to make that completion run even if you don't have Aegon, as long as you have the viable alternatives like Corvus Glaive or Sasquatch and Sabretooth. These are expensive options, the most expensive being at the collector, where you're spending like an extra 20 to 25 revives than an Aegon player, but in the grand scheme of things, that's what, 800 1,000 units. So without Aegon, it's only costing you an extra 1,000 units. It's really not as bad as it sounds. Yes, it's not ideal, but the path itself, you're not hurting on the path as much without Aegon so much as you're hurting on the collector. As you can see here, Aegon is by far one of the best options for the collector, and that's where his power really shines, because he's 999, hitting for big damage and huge bleeds, and has unstoppable heavies and just so many good abilities in his kit to deal with the collector. So it's just a little different. But do keep in mind there's plenty of people. Brian Grant, contest champion, Coop has done it. Sweetia, Hector has done a path. KT1 has done a path. I'm sure there's so many more that I'm not even naming. I just wanted to name a few in case you wanted to, do your research and see. Next, I want to say a commentary on the thousands of units. I know that people say that, Abyss of Legends is a wallet warrior content. And I do want to say, again, take it with a grain of salt, because I did end up buying an Odin's vault in order to do my final path. And a big part of that is I just didn't want to wait. It did end up costing me 1,500 extra units than I had saved. But except for that last 1,500 units, I had grinded all of my units for Abyss of Legends. And it's just a grind. You just build up the resources over time, and you jump in when you hit there. And you don't have to stop playing other content. I still was running paths in X6. I still did my variant explorations with my free revives and stuff, and I just only used units to do Abyss. I wasn't using boosts and stuff. So it's not like you have to put content on hold. You just have to amp up your skills a bit and really focus on doing other content as cheap as possible instead of uniting your way through. So yeah, I just want to say thousands of units sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. It's just a patience thing. Abyss of Legends isn't going anywhere. So don't let the thousands of units threshold scare you off. For a hardcore arena grinder, you could get to a path of Abyss every month. I think, yeah, about every month. You could have all 5 paths done with units in about 5 months, maybe even less if you're even more hardcore than I'm talking about. And that's just all I'm saying. It's really not that bad. I did mine, I think, in 10 months or so, and that's because I was spending units on calves and completing content like variants and stuff. So it's just not as bad as it sounds. And I kind of wanted to lower the stigma of the unit cost. It's not that bad. It really isn't. It's expensive, it's costly, and it takes a long time, but the content's not going anywhere. And it's actually going to get better over time as people start bringing rank 3s into Abyss of Legends. People start bringing, all boosts and better answers. You know, Magneto is a new saving grace in Abyss for so many people. He's arguably one of the new horsemen, and new horsemen will come out. There will be better and better options, and people will learn how to take down these fights better and better. And that's a huge factor. It's going to cut costs, and it's going to get a lot easier over time. You know, well, it's not going to get easier so much as people are, you know, going to have better rosters or better answers or stronger champions. So, you know, difficulty changes. Next up is that the easiest and the cheapest are not synonymous. A lot of times people say easiest, and what they mean is cheapest. And when people say cheapest, they're thinking easiest. Very different factors. So there are many fights in the Abyss that can be one-shot. A good example is Iron Man Infinity War. You can one-shot Iron Man Infinity War with Human Torch. You can do it. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And the mechanics of it aren't crazy hard. It's just a lot of dexing. It's a lot of dexing. It's a lot of hoping Iron Man Infinity War doesn't evade you at an inopportune time. It's a lot of diligence. It's the first fight on Path 5, so it's a lot of start over again, start over again, start over again, you know? But you can do it. You can get that one shot. It's just very, very challenging. So as from a cheapest perspective, that's super cheap. That's free. It's one life, right? But that is not easy. Not at all. Whereas if you take, like, say, Corvus Glaive into the Iron Man Infinity War fight, it's going to be expensive. But suddenly you don't have to dex a million specials, right? Yes, you're getting less damage off per hit. Yes, it's going to be way more costly, but suddenly you don't have to worry as much. Or if you bring Void is a patience game. The mechanics there aren't like crazy difficult, but it is a lot of parrying. It's a lot of slow play. It's a whole different kind of patience mindset, and that's the Abyss, is looking at what you're doing, what you need in order to complete a fight, and realizing that easy is very, very dependent on what you as a player prefer when you're tackling the Abyss. Which brings me into the second point, which is that cheaper is not always better. I think a lot of people really are focused on how can I make this fight cheap? How can I clear the Abyss for as cheap as possible? That's not always the best option. Now, for a crazy high-skilled, super high-patient player, absolutely, go in, do it as cheap as possible. Do it unitless. Heck, build up the revives and the potions and just absolutely murk Abyss of Legends. Really just middle finger kabam, and be like, hey, didn't cost me anything. Absolutely love it, but that does not always work for everybody. I know for me, I lack the patience to do that. I know that for me, I lack the skill and the focus in order to do these crazy one-shots like Magneto one-shots, or Doom SP3 one-shots. There were multiple times where I had Doom and Doom was the right answer, and I just used Aegon, because Aegon just hit harder. And yes, it cost me an extra 400 units, but I was just like, I'm so glad I'm done with this fight. That's the reality of Abyss of Legends. It is a 5 to 12 hour content that you are running through. You got to ask yourself, how much is your time worth? You know, what's your mental sanity? How patient are you as a player? Do you need these champions somewhere else in the game, Alliance Quest or Alliance War? Do you have time to be sitting around for that long? Time to dedicate to this game? Do you have kids, a family, a work, you know, etc., other things that are pushing you out? Maybe 400 units isn't that much, you know? To me, that's 3 days worth of grinding in the arena. Not even. It's like 2.5 days of grinding in the arena for me. And I'm a relatively above average unit grinder. I don't even farm that much compared to other people who are getting like 7K a month. I'm only getting like 4 or 5. So it really puts things into perspective when you say, yeah, I think it's worth, you know, an extra 400 units to get through this fight a half hour, 45 minutes earlier. Additionally, there were fights where the suboptimal, bringing a suboptimal champion, was much more straightforward. I think the biggest example of this is the Torch versus Aegon argument for like Iron Man Infinity War, or Magneto versus Doom in a lot of fights, where Magneto just gets more damage off, but you constantly have to maintain armor breaks by holding heavy, and if you make a mistake, you just instant die. And I make a lot of mistakes. I'm prone to mistakes, heaven forbid. And the reality of that is that sometimes it's better and actually cheaper for an individual to bring a suboptimal champion in and then just revive that champion, but they're getting guaranteed value. You know, you're, instead of getting a 100% one shot and then keep reviving a champion hoping you can get that one shot, you revive a champion and you get 12% every time. And it still takes you 6 revives, but that's probably a lot cheaper than it would have been if you had kept on trying to force a one shot when you weren't capable of it. You just didn't have the skills or the patience. So that's really something important to think about. The second thing for cheaper is not always better is that suboptimal was strictly faster. Some of the one-shots are SP3 intensive. Looking at Doom. And this is very mentally draining. Especially on my last path, when I just wanted to be done, this is where I really, really took the cost. Where you just go for suboptimal because it's faster. There were a lot of fights where even playstyle, like it didn't change the champion, but just playstyle. A really good example is Yellow Jacket that I took down with Nick Fury. People were like, bait SP1s until you've baited 20, so you can push him to an SP2 and you don't have to worry about getting cooked by an SP1. I was like, yeah, but that takes so long. I have to bait 20 SP1s, or I could just eat the power sting damage, stun him, push him up to an SP2, and then just hope he blocks. And there are two lives where he just held block for like 40 hits. I got a free 40 light bleeds in. I did like an extra like 18% damage just for free because he just held block. And yes, that's luck intensive, and yes, that's suboptimal. I wasn't getting the most out of the life, but it was easy, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and that's a lot better to me than the drag of dexing out 20 special ones. Something to think about. And then finally, the last one is I didn't want to rank up an optimal champion. Now, I could have ran past certain fights much cheaper if I had just ranked up Void. Like, I have a Void. He's Sig 40, rank 4. If I just sigged him up, ranked him up to rank 5, last path would have been way easier. Definitely one of the paths where I feel like Void has a lot more better fight matchups than Torch. And, you know, I thought about it. I really, really did, and I didn't. Because the truth is that I'm in the process of sigging up my Red Guardian. I have a She-Hulk I want to rank 5. I have so many Science champions I want to work up. I have a 6-star Thing I want to rank up and stuff. So I don't really have the Science cats. I don't want to dedicate those to Void right now. And yeah, if it costs me an 800 units, so what? For 800 units, I save a couple months of Sig Stones, you know, more than a couple months of Science Sig Stones, because I know I'm pretty much only using Science Sig Stones, and Tier 4 Class Catalyst for Science. Quite a bit of Tier 4 Class Catalyst for Science, not to mention the Tier 5 Basic and Tier 2 Alpha, which I'm on a current Tier 2 Alpha drop myself as well. So, you know, you might think, oh, this champion is optimal, but if you have an alternative and it's just a handful of units, what's stopping you? So those are the misconceptions I wanted to rant about, because there are some things I really, really noticed a lot of. And maybe, you know, you disagree, totally fine. These are my opinions. This is how I felt about it. But, you know, I love those logical arguments. So if you disagree or you want to change my mind, hit me up in the comments. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.